Hello, hi everyone. If you could please introduce yourselves in the chat as you're coming in, please provide your name, where you are in the world, your job, and please do make sure that you stay on mute, but feel free to use the chat as actively as you want. I can start off. My name is Ula, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. I work as part of Apolitical's free content and engagement team, editing articles written by members. I'm currently in Washington, DC, but I normally live in London. So please, I see we have lots of people coming in. Let's see, where's the furthest we have people. Canada, South Africa, Ontario. Please continue introducing yourselves, and just a reminder to stay on mute, but keep using the chat. Winnipeg. All right. So for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, Apolitical is a global peer-to-peer learning network for government. We provide online learning and content to public servants and policymakers across the globe, with new networks and boot camps offered every week. More than 70% of our content is written by public servants like you. You can learn how to contribute your own expertise and experiences via the link we just put in the chat. And if you're lucky, I might be your editor. Kidding. Today, we're joined by two great speakers to talk about how to improve governance cultures and practices. Before I introduce our speakers, I think it'd be great if we could see everyone who we've got in the room today. If you're comfortable doing so, please just go into gallery view in the top left-hand corner and then turn your camera on and give everyone a nice big wave. All right, nice to see everyone. So we're going to start off with, and if you see the link in the chat, that's where you can contribute. We're always looking for more people to write articles for us, so I'll encourage everyone multiple times to do this. All right, so we're going to start off with a couple of poll questions. As our last few participants are joining, to get a sense of how everyone is approaching this workshop. If you've joined Zoom using your web browser, you may not be able to see the poll questions, so I'll be reading them out and you can respond using the chat window. So the first question is, do you know what good governance is? Your options are yes, no, not sure. All right, it seems we're leaning towards yes. That's pretty good. All right. Let's see, we're almost 70% have voted. All right, I think the resounding answer here is yes. Okay, so next question. At the core, what value does good governance provide for public authorities? A, reputation. B, trust. C, risk management. All right. Let's see. Risk management might overtake trust. All right. Definitely getting closer. It's really interesting. Okay. All right. All right. So it looks like trust has won here. All right. So now, in a few words, in the chat, perhaps share what you take to mean by good governance. Anyone? Any ideas for how you define or understand good governance? All right, accountability, control, responsiveness, having the information you need in a timely way to make effective decisions, serving the people, yes. All right. Decision making, accountability, human-centered, good. All right. All right. Participative, okay. All right, thank you, everyone. So perhaps now it's time to move on to what our speakers have to say. So today we'll be hearing from Dr. İnan İzci and Dr. Erkin Erimez. Dr. İzci is a governance researcher at Aguden Governance Academy and partner in ARGE Consulting. His expertise lies in the areas of local governance, sustainable development, and digital governance. He holds a BSc in Economic and Social Policy and an MSc in European Public Policy, both from the University of London. His PhD in political science was granted by the Free University of Brussels, which was on the topic of digital metropolitan governance. Dr. Erimez is an academic board member of Aguden Governance Academy and a partner in ARGE Consulting. His expertise mainly lies in corporate and public governance, sustainability, energy, and law. He holds a BSc degree in electronics engineering and an MBA in marketing from Bogazici University. He has received his PhD on strategic alliances from the same university. All right, I will be handing over to the two of you now. So please begin whenever you are ready. It might be worth warning both of you that I'll be keeping time and that if you go over, I'll start to interrupt you. All right.
Thank you very much, Ula. First of all, I would like to say that, given the pandemic conditions, everybody and their loved ones are safe and good. And hello from Turkey. Today, we will actually discuss a very kind of hotly discussed and frequently spoken issue of good governance culture and practices. And Erkin is going to also, approach mostly from both private sector and public sector, and I will be more touching upon the local approach. Let's start, with the actually poll question, what we mean governance, before we move on to good governance. We can take from different perspectives, from corporate governance, from public sector, but at the core, it is about collective action and affairs, management of collective affairs. If we live in two people, like Robinson Crusoe, we need good governance or governance, because what we mean, it is about really deciding, acting, and then learning how to manage our collective affairs. In that sense, it is not government per se, because government is more about execution of already made decisions, either parliament, either the management board, or the management board of NGOs. And it involves structures of governing, processes of governing, and practices of governing. So it is not just governing itself, but which conditions those processes, like procedures, how you choose your management board, or how the councillors are elected, this is all part of actually governance. And it doesn't have to be formal, it can be informal as well. So it is like a culture, institution, rules and practices, but it can be norms as well, it can be informal contacts as well. At the core, it's really about steering and oversight over our collective decisions. It's a whole household decision of going to holiday, where to go, how to go, where we should spend. It's a matter of governance in the household, in a sense, but it can be the governance at the global level, how we're gonna deal with vaccine kind of justice, or how we're gonna deal with patent rights in that regard. And it can be realized on consent, but also it can be authority or even force. So there can be authoritarian governance. It doesn't have to be democratic or good. It can be by force. So in a sense, dictatorships or authoritarian rule, or the the boss-owned companies can be very forceful. Mobbing can take place within this governance structure. So it doesn't have to be intrinsically a good concept. It's a mostly descriptive, a positive concept. And it can take place through institutions, networks, associations, even in households. Erkin Bey, word is yours.
Okay. Actually, İnan explained us the governance concept. However, governance to be beneficial, it needs to be good governance. Because if it's not a participatory way of decision making in a society, organization, government, then it will not serve the needs and benefits for all. Therefore, first of all, for an effective good governance, we need to have some rules which design the decision-making processes. And İnan, could you just put the presentation again? Okay. And also, it needs to consider the human rights issues as well. Because good governance actually the base of the participatory democracy. If the governance is not participatory, as I said, it doesn't serve the needs of all societies. Currently, we have a lot of problems in the world, some of which is mainly coming from the governance issues. Actually, governance is a heart of everything. For instance, inequalities when we talk about. Again, this is a big governance issue. You need to make decisions because each decision you make in government or even private sector or in civil society, it affects the result. Therefore, it has to be pluralistic and participatory and based on a rule. The second issue is that the collaboration. We already know that it's not very easy to reach a consensus in all the issues. But when people understand each other better, then they could understand their concerns and some kind of consensus could be reached at the end of these processes. And this could open up a way to solve the problems or maybe just create developments, innovations in the society, in the government as well. And it needs to be an evidence-based process. As you know, OECD is working on this issue for a long time. And we already know that some of the decisions made by the political institutions, not the government institutions, is based on not data or scientific information, but value-based. However, even if you make a value-based decision, you need to understand the condition based on data, understand the risks, trust issues, benefits, and then maybe you could just make a decision based on those decisions and maybe for a transition. Therefore, evidence is critical in decision-making processes. In a large part of the world now, information sharing becomes more and more common, and even it shapes our daily life. So this is a good process, but everybody is not moving in the same direction and in the same speed. And the other issue is that a participatory process, an understanding process, actually creates the trust to the government organizations and the private sector as well. Because we already know that trust to the government and the private sector is very low now. And we need to gain the trust of the people to make some changes, to make innovations. But we need to be fair on this as well. Could you go to the other slide? We think that there are some principles that the good governance need to be based on. One of them is accountability, as you stated in the beginning. The second one must be the fairness. I need to be fair in my decision, and people need to believe me that I'm making a fair decision. If I'm making a decision, I can explain transparently why I choose this, what are the pros and cons for that. And the process, decision-making process must be transparent so that I can explain how I made this decision. on what evidence or on what value and why. So when I communicate this, then even if I am not in line with your thoughts, I could accept the decision because of the reasoning behind it. Okay? And accountability comes with the transparency, because I need to make my decision. I have to be accountable from my decisions as a decision maker. And if I have a strong background analysis, just like in some of the cases, important issues, impact assessments, then I could just communicate why I choose my alternative. Therefore, accountability is part of this fairness and transparency process. But one step back when I got, I need to be making a responsible decision-making approach. Because before I make this decision, I need to consider all alternatives, positive and negative, pros and cons, and make a cost-benefit analysis, not in maybe in impact assessment terms, but in some manner. And based on that, I need to do that. So this is the fourth issue that we need to be clear about. The third issue is that the effectiveness. The decision you make actually need to be effective. And it could be applicable. It could be creating some kind of benefit to the society. People need to understand it, even if you are a private institution or a public institution. And also, the decisions you are making needs to be consistent. When you make a decision, something, let's say, about an issue, today it's A, tomorrow it's B, then it will be inconsistent and the trust will be lost. And actually, the other issue is that if decision-making is not enough, deployment of decision-making is more critical, because even if you make decision, even if you make your, let's say, laws, regulations, if you do not enforce it effectively, then you will not be able to reach the desired results. Could you go another slide? So actually, as I believe in you that governance is creating the trust. Trust is the most important issue in our society for private and government sector and also the civil society. But the second issue we need to consider, just implementation of good governance, is the risk governance. Actually, when we have a participatory process and communicating with each other, actually we are reaching a reserve of information, and it's too big to know everything. Therefore, all these stakeholder participations create a database to understand the risks. And maybe these risks are different for different groups of the society or countries as well. So that approach could create a resilience actually in society if we manage it correctly. This could be, we know we are living in a health crisis now, which also turned to as an economical crisis and societal crisis. But on the other hand, when we are dealing with health crisis, we are also dealing with the environment crisis, like the climate change. It's coming, it's affecting our life. And even if we just get out of this crisis, then we still be dealing, we need to deal with the climate crisis because it's over there and we need to find a solution. And what we see, for instance, in COP discussions, actually, it's very difficult to reach a consensus because everybody is just trying to get thinking about the benefit of the country. That's correct. However, maybe some global initiatives needs to be considered making such decisions when just dealing with this climate change issue. So actually, it is also affect the sustainability side of it because sustainability is related with the natural, economic, and social issues, but at the end of the day, it affects our governance structure. If we are not having a strong governance approach, decision-making processes, sound decision-making, then it's not easy to reach a sustainable level or, let's say, have a planet in the future. And as you see, all these issues create some kind of social distress. in the society, inequality. Because as we said, for instance, when you consider the tax decisions, actually it affects the income distribution and the equality position. It's not directly related with the personal income tax. For instance, how you tax your technology investments, it's another issue. When you, Mr. Acamoğlu from MIT told that actually, for instance, the tax burden for an employee could be around 20%. However, if you make a technology investment, it is just 5%. So actually it favors the improvement in technology, which creates unemployment. So this is a decision process and related with the good governance issue. İnan, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Erkin talked about risks, but also there are positive benefits. First of all, especially for the local level and the public sector, it is really looking at as a whole, ecological system, social system, economic system. We can't separate each other. If there is no economic activity, you don't have the tax and you don't have the public budgets. But also you have to look at the local level and global level. It is your neighborhood that you make the change at the climate. It's not up in the air, basically. So this holistic understanding should be embedded everywhere. Secondly, it is becoming more responsive to the needs of user, buyers, voters, service receivers, even your own employees. If there is an issue of gender equality within your institution, and if you are not responsive to this, you might lose those people. And you might also lose your reputation as well. It is about really being participated for not the sake of being participation. It's not a democratic procedural norm. It is actually making inclusive decisions, making your institutions and your governing process parts inclusive. And also innovation. Where and which point you need innovation? Innovation always comes into mind some sort of a technological high-tech. No, it is about designing, actually. Even the NASA have to take into account of astronauts' behavior, however high-tech is their technology. And it is about really using data and evidence to make policy making. We are living in the age of, in a way, post-truth. Everybody's thought or opinion seems to be their own reality, but there are facts. And we have to revolve around the facts. And this is also the benefits of governance. So we can start fact-based deliberative processes among the institution, between institutions and citizens, customers, and so on. And also about its being inclusive in terms of social life, in terms of making these risks into benefits. If you are at the neighborhood level, you can have a problem of drugs and street crime, but also they can be youth volunteering for the public good. It's your approach. It's about rights. Human history about is a struggle of rights as well. So how are you gonna implement them? And equitable policies in every sense, employment policy, environmental policy, even vaccination process as well. I'm just trying to keep up with the time. So floor is yours, Erkin Bey.
Actually, when we make a collective decision-making possible, then it could be better to allocate resources, because when we have, as I said, this pool of information and we are making evidence-based decision-making, then since we have a limited resource, we could allocate that in more effective way. In actually government institutions, one of the biggest problems is that actually you have money now, but you need to make some investment for the future risks. And if you don't get the consent of the people, in this case, it's very difficult to make such spending, because that could create some kind of tension between society and the government. So, for instance, participatory decision-making may create a space to deal with this issue and create a consensus. And based on that consensus, you can just more efficiently allocate your resources, and that could create some kind of income generation. We know that it's not an easy task, and as you know, people are working on different issues to reach that level. For instance, they are trying to make some changes in the just wealth of nation calculation, which is moving to more quality of life perspective rather than the GDP perspective. However, it's not finalized yet. So that's another issue. And that kind of communication could create some kind of trust that will mobilize the other resources as well, because trust is the basis of the others, utilization of others' resources. Inan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So just an example, we will share out with you a unique model that we had developed and implemented. We implemented in Istanbul, but since it's principle-based and a generic model, it is basically a citizen-centric model for mapping and measuring local governance culture and practices. In simple terms, how those 7 principles that Erkin mentioned are carried out at the 4 stages of governing: decision-making, resource allocation, service provision, and organizational working or institutional kind of structures. It is really about mapping. So it looks at development opportunities. So it's more about improving rather than a ranking tool. How are you going to improve your own kind of local level? And we made it specifically for citizens, so citizens can engage with their own local government decision makers, even parties, so they can improve the local governance structure. It's also a model developed for peer learning, so each municipality can learn from their own good practices. It is a unique model in line with the international norms. I mean, I was the main researcher, and we looked at almost all the international kind of indexes and measurement tools to come up with some sort of citizen usable manner, let's say. And it is really about desktop research. So since accountability and transparency is gaining ground at the local level, you need to have, of course, documents available. That's the only condition. And if not, then as a taxpayer, as a voter, and as a service receiver, you have a right to demand it as well. And let me just go through what was it about. We created 220 objective criteria that any citizen can observe by looking at their websites and official documents. You don't need to ask anything. You don't have to go to the documents in terms of offline. You have to use the website, basically. It is a self-improvement tool for the municipalities. It is basically by mapping and measuring in order to create some sort of learning process, triggering a continuous excellence culture for participation, for equality, for right-based social policy, and so on. You will see, you can access, I mean, we will give you at the chat, the link in English, so you can look at it. And it's a perspective for others as well. NGOs, even the local media can use it. I mean, how my councillors, can I contact directly with my councillors? Can I approach my manager to make opinions in terms of social inclusion and so on? And it's basically about promoting open, collaborative, and inclusive local government culture and stakeholder engagement, basically. One example, what we did, there are 39 municipalities in Istanbul. It is one of the biggest cities in the world, as you know, bigger than 177 countries in the world, basically. And it is the Constantinople of the Byzantium, and it is like the history, basically. In this part, there are 37 of them who are obliged to do strategic planning, because we use strategic plans as the backbone for our measurement. And what we found, they cluster between 30% to 65%, or I mean, we scale it between 0 to 1,000, but you can use as a percentage. What we found that they clustered mainly the medium, I mean, and the mean mostly between 375, I mean, 40 to 60 to 0.5%, let's say. So this is basically the picture of good governance at municipalities, these municipalities of Istanbul. And we didn't rank them because we didn't look for champions. We looked some sort of clustering so they can push each other for better learning. So you see 3 leading and 3, lagging, basically. And the middle is mostly populated by the almost all, the municipalities. So what we did, we found that 37 district municipalities do have structures and do have institutional mechanism, but they are not really used. There are participatory mechanism, but we don't see the report. We don't see the effect of participation. We don't see the feedback systems of, reporting back to citizens, what happened to their participation input. So what we found that the legislation, institutional mechanism, and even rules are there, but they are weak and patchy by practices. So we need to look at the practices rather than the procedures or the institutional mechanisms. And we found four main points of improvement. First, integrated thinking or holistic thinking or system thinkings. You can use a different wording, but you have to look at the overall picture of municipal governing system. Because there is a national development plan, there is sustainable development goals, then you have got the local level. So how are you going to integrate? You have got the private sector, NGOs operating at your district. So how are you going to cooperate with them? If there is no employment, then you have unemployment and a social policy issue. So these are all integrated thinking. And then it's not just participation, it is meaningful and effective participation, because participation can mean instrumental manipulation for the leadership. So how are you going to make sure it's meaningful and effective? You have to measure, you have to report, and you have to feed back to the citizens and stakeholders. So it makes a difference in the decisions and resource allocation. And thirdly, data-driven decision making. There are lots of discursive mentioning, but we don't see fairly low level of data or evidence-based reasoning for strategic plans, social policy decisions, and continuous learning philosophy. That has to be institutionalized in order to really further good governance culture. These are just instruments and tools for the culture. And at the top, democracy and development is a continuous process. You can't just stop at one stage. Just to feedback in terms of, the Council of Europe, head of Good Governance Division, approved that it is the most comprehensive and detailed form of measurement for their 12 principles of good governance. OECD also accepted as an innovation and put up at their website as a best practice. And Hubert Heinert, who is the leading figure in the Europe in terms of metropolitan and local governance, also attended our conference and supported it basically. So let me just pass over to Erkin and wrap it up, and then turn to you, ask your questions, engage with us, please.
Actually, I could say that it's becoming more important to have a good governance in actually current stage of the world, because we have a lot of problems we need to solve, and it's not easy to solve one by one by just acting by ourselves. We need to make a collective action, both in the country level, in the regional level, in local level, and the global level as well. And for instance, last year, LSE and the Metropolis made a research on about the local governance responses to the COVID crisis, I think in June or July of 2020. What they found is that, and it covers close to, I think, 100 local government institutions all around the world. And most of the people say that participatory decision-making become more and more important, because other views are becoming more critical to make a decision. They need to understand what is the risk, what is the positions they need to understand. So to manage the uncertainty and risk and to gain the trust of others, you need to use tools for the good governance. You need to be fair. You need to be transparent. You need to be responsible, accountable, to reach a good level of governance and actually also enforceable decisions, both in the private and the public sector. And that could also create some kind of innovation, because all these communication and interaction with the people will make, could give you some kind of new ideas, which will create innovation in public or private sector. Therefore, we need to think as good governance as a source of also innovative thinking, innovation. And as I said, inclusion is critical. We need to include all related parties. For instance, meaningful stakeholder engagement, what we mean is that you need to be part of all these engagement processes. If you just take out some of the groups, then it's not a meaningful participation. It is just, let's say, some kind of manipulation. Therefore, I can say that for a sustainable future, we need a good governance culture to solve our problems. If we do not do this, then I think the problems will go bigger and bigger, and maybe it will not be easily solved at the end of the day. I would like to finish my presentation here. Thank you for all participants.
And I like to, I mean, we've been mostly privileged to talk more, and you were in a listening positions. I would like to also learn from you. I mean, please do engage with us through email or LinkedIn. It will be nice to hear your experience, talk about, how we can improve at local, national, but more importantly, global level. And I think that was our kind of presentation, and looking forward to your questions, basically.
All right, thank you both so much. I now want to open up the space for a Q&A. Please go ahead and type any questions that you may have in the chat. And while Dr. İzci and Dr. Erimez are answering your questions, I'll be looking through them and making sure that they're coming through. And then posing them at our speakers. And then do keep using the chat. We're monitoring it, and we'll try to get to all the questions. So I am going to start off with a question from Patricia. And Patricia asks, I have observed a little bit too much consultation to the point that decisions are delayed or deferred. Any thoughts? Intent is good, but it seems to really make the process much longer.
I will have a go on this. I think this decision, this dilemma of more democracy, less efficiency, or more effective but less democratic, it is really a problem to be dealt with. But I think there are a couple of things to improve this balance. And it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, but it could be mutually enforcing. If you have good structures in terms of where to make participation, how to make decision making, how to resolve the disagreements in a process-based approach and applying these principles, but at the same time, knowing where to stop in terms of engagement, because certain things has to be carried out. So execution process, once democratic process works, then you have to have the oversight, monitoring processes rather than intervention into the execution process. So it has to be structured depending on the socioeconomic conditions, institutional tradition, and culture. But it's not a mutually exclusive process. It is about a matter of designing participation for effective governing, because you can have the most democratic decision, but if it doesn't create any output, it doesn't mean anything.
I would also say something about it. Actually, this could change case by case. For instance, in a war situation, it's not a participatory decision making. It's an authority-based decision making. But when you need a consensus with a large public space, then you need to make a participation. And maybe you just call all the relevant actors with a time limit. EU uses that process. For instance, they say that at least 60 days of engagement process, and everybody engages with them. So that kind of methods could be used to simplify. I know that since I am also working with the OECD regarding some policy development issues, I can say that everybody talking about it's difficult to get the stakeholders' views. However, if you don't get the stakeholders' views, the effect of regulations may not be good enough to when you enforce it. So maybe this could be just a way of solution for that.
All right, thank you. So I have another question, and I'm not quite sure which of you is best placed to answer it. So I'll direct it at both of you. But Martine asks, would you apply the donut economics approach to the challenges we are all facing? And I think she's referring to Donut Economics, 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist by Kate Raworth when she's asking this question.
I mean, I personally haven't read it. I can't keep up with the reading, but I pass it to Erkin Bey. But maybe in terms of simplifying the questions and making practical, they'll give us a better chance to answer it.
Yeah, I can say that actually, as I said before, the critical issue is that how you base your decision making. Actually, all these problems is coming from the decisions made. Consider the climate change issue. We already know that it's very difficult to make a transition. It's not an easy way. Even if we want to make it in overnight, let's say just stop coal power plants. We can't do that because we need energy. And we know that renewable energy needs investment. Now it's becoming cheaper and cheaper. However, conversion is not an easy way. But the critical issue is that actually climate changes continue to occur because we are maybe making some decisions later rather than sooner. So actually, what I could say is that all these issues related with the income distribution, disparity between countries, all these technologies, maybe all these issues related with the decision. And the decisions are not always a good governance, based on good governance approach. They are based on the geopolitical reasoning. They are based on some, let's say, strategic issues. But as I said, countries or communities and even companies make these decisions based on their interests. So we need to reach a consensus about this, how we just balance these interests. That's the critical issue. For instance, I know that US Department of Defense has a report stating that climate change is the biggest geopolitical challenge in the next 20, 30 years period. Even if that's the case, because of the water crisis, especially in the Africa and maybe Southern Europe, there could be mass migrations, and that could create a big problem in the countries where these people migrate. Maybe Turkey could be one of them. Italy, Greece, maybe Germany, Europe, that's the case for US as well. For instance, Mexico has a problem. Therefore, you need to manage it. But today, even if we know this, we are not taking any effective step to solve it. So actually, the critical issue is that the balance of interest is not easy to reach, but we need to find a way to do it at the global level for some problems.
All right, thank you. I have a question from Jem, and I yet again think this might be one for both of you to grapple with. But it is, do either of you have any suggestions or strategies to deal with a culture that is dysfunctional yet resistant to change? Trust is vital, but resistant cultures are quite hard to penetrate. They don't like the way things are, and they don't necessarily want to change. So I guess, yeah, do you have any suggestions?
I can take up this question and try to answer it in a less time so we can take more questions. The simple fact, I mean, governance seems to be some sort of new secular Bible. It's like some sort of a ritualistic process. It is not the case. Actually, if it's designed well and if it works well, it benefits everybody, including leadership. The issue of change is really resisting their interest or identity or their norms. If it can be shown in practical terms how good governance will improve their benefits and the overall function and outputs, then this will make the difference. Simple fact of, for example, global reporting initiative for the big corporations for sustainability. It started as a PR tool, but now it's really about, the employee identity. It's more about, the consumer sensitivities about child labor and so on. So what I am trying to say that this resistance can be overcome by showing the personal and institutional benefits of improving governance.
I would like to add something to you. One of the created issues you need to consider is that the power of oversight, because if you make people aware of the benefits, then oversight power will be more and more used. In this case, even if the ones who do resist to implement good governance practices, due to this pressure, they need to make that change.
There's a slightly related question that's come up from Syed. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. But they ask, first they point out that the COVID crisis seems to have shown that effective governance can happen without public consultation, like in totalitarian regimes in China, countries that can marshal resources and technologies much more effectively. And so they ask, what are your thoughts about these alternative governance models that aren't inherently democratic?
That's a bit tricky question, relevant question as well. I think in these terms, we have to look at the cost of authoritarianism as well. You can solve a problem effectively, but in the long term, it might involve costs. We really don't know exactly the success of China because of data and access of the journalists to in terms of rural areas is unknown. It is the public official figures. So that is one important issue. So openness make sure that I would on the contrary say that it is public trust and the sense of community can push forward. We've seen in Turkey, the government got off guard, but social solidarity worked well. Neighborhood helped each other in many senses. The carrying bags for the elderly and so on. So effectiveness and efficiency in the mid and long term will lots of costs. So I wouldn't trade in.
And also I would like to add something as well. As Inan said, China's figures is not transparent. We don't know the exact situation there. The second issue is that China is a different culture. And this authoritarianism actually exists there more than maybe 3,000, 4,000 years. And when you look at the Chinese history, participatory management decision-making is not a part of it. And even before the BC, that's the case. From starting BC 600, more authoritarian leadership exists in China. And when people would like to ask something from the government, the critical issue, what they do is uprising. And that created all these changes in China. And this culture continues. And it may not be easy to replicate in other places. And the second issue is that since they are trying to be as close as possible just to keep all these internet and some kind of social media issues out of country, they are trying to keep this communication at low level. But it's not easy to do that from today's birth because everybody learning from each other. And people, when they see the power of freedom, which we have the case in Hong Kong, they are just trying to keep that freedom. So as Inan said, we don't know what's the final position of China in the future. And that also kills the innovative capacity of the society as well.
Thank you. That's a very, very interesting answer. I have a question from Mike that perhaps I'll direct at you, Dr. Erimez, which is that in an age dominated by wealth aggregation and the corporate state, the only way to make headway is at the local level. his question is, how does this start? So what practical things can be done to start locally and to re-engage the citizenry?
Actually, we just experienced this in Turkey. We work with the local governments because local governments are very close to the population and people. When you create some kind of awareness at the local level, and if people understand that they could just ask and oversee the actions of the local governments, then they understand that they also could ask and oversee the central government. And when such a pressure increases in the government level, then this will change. But I cannot say that this is an overnight process. It's a long time. It's some kind of change. And also some maybe civil society organizations could play some role on this. Especially, we know that mostly we are talking about the behavioral economic side of it, but some maybe behavioral nudges which show the benefit of that change, that could be faster. But I cannot say that it's an easy process because there will be a clash. The ones who control the power would like to keep it. And it's not an easy job. Maybe when you look at, again, the history of worker rights in US, in UK, or in Europe, that's the case, or women rights. You see, these are all clashes of society, maybe antitrust laws as well. So all these issues could be achieved, and we need to make a transition. We see that if we do not move to the sustainable economy, it's very difficult to solve these problems, because when you look at it, maybe it's not exactly the same, but some kind of a medieval structure is just coming back, because lots of power in a very little population, and the other part is very weak to do that. But disasters affect the society. This Black Death changed the employment structure in Europe. Maybe COVID could be the triggering point as well.
I'd like to also add some as well. And thanks for the question to Mike, because I think it's very relevant. I mean, all the discussions, all the political discourse, and even the market-driven discourse about basic abstraction and symbolic, but local is everyday life. It's a practical area. I always believe that the word divides and practicalities of life unites us. I mean, when we see a child starving at the street, I think we all feel similar. I mean, it's a basic trait of human being. The issue is that local level is where everything becomes realized. I mean, we don't experience everything at the same place, at the same rates. It changes. So the locality or the geography makes a difference, first of all. Secondly, it is the practicalities of everyday life that makes people engage. I mean, the representative democracy showed its weaknesses. I mean, how are we going to ensure the representatives are acting in accordance with our wishes, which might even change between the elections as well? And so I think the participatory democracy and local democracy needs two kind of steps. One is making local government as a representative venue, but opening up for participative, even for direct democracy through co-governance. But at the same time, organizing community action, oversight, for example. Some SMEs are good, valuable, but some of them might be engaged in malpractices. So you can approach them and you can warn them. This is bad for the health. You shouldn't sell this. And it is about also creating this trust within the neighborhoods and creating this civic culture, not through of, some sort of middle class educated thing, a luxury, but it's really about bottom-up neighborhood level action for good. And I totally believe at the local level it's the bed of democracy, bedrock of democracy since the Athena times. But I think in the current time, in a globalized, maybe post-truth driven societies, it is actually what you see in the street that is going to make them difference, definitely.
One thing I would like to add on this, just one. University of Chicago has made a research on Italy's innovation practices, and it shows that the importance of good governance. When a company becomes more and more bigger, in this case, they employ politicians, because in Italy regulation, local politicians could work in a company. And when the companies are small, they are more innovative because they need to make change to be bigger. When they become bigger, then the innovativeness decreases. So when you decrease your when the innovation decreases, then actually innovative capability and the development capability of the society, and also maybe some elimination of inequalities disappears actually.
All right, so we're slowly running out of time. So I just want to make sure that we get to one final question. I'm going to have you both answer this one really, really quickly, because I think it'll be helpful. But I also don't want us to spend too much time on it. So Insa asks if you could provide a clear example of good governance. You know, a precise case study at the local, regional, or national level, a particular sort of, you know, exemplary case that you think is inspirational.
Okay, I give an example from another city of Turkey, Bursa. There are one district called Nilüfer. There are 65 neighborhoods. The municipality formed citizen committees or citizen assemblies at neighborhood level. They engage them during the strategic planning processes to create a strategic plan, both participatory but in line with sustainable development goals. So what they came up, they had engaged their citizens in the planning process, but also diffused the sustainability vision at local level and formed a strategic plan in line with the SDGs, all of the SDGs. And I think that's a very good example how the civic power and contribution can even take place in a planning process. Okay,
very quick from you, Dr. Erimez.
Okay, I have no addition on that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us. While we're wrapping up, I want to ask all of you to share your one-word takeaway from today's workshop. I know mine will be informative. And I'd also, before we all go, I'd also really like to ask our two speakers for a key takeaway. So either of you can feel free to go first, but what is your key takeaway from today's workshop?
Okay, I take it. It's a turn. I think what I see that from all over the world, people are really paying attention by attending this in terms of discussion. So good governance is gaining ground out of maybe crisis, but also curiosity for better world. And I think we are at the same ship. It is called planet Earth. And I think we have to repair it and we have to make it better for everybody. Otherwise, all the palaces, all the luxuries will mean nothing without humans and ecosystems. So I think I am glad that people are interested, asked questions, and I think I am learning from them because I copied all the questions into a Word document.
From my side, first of all, I would like to thank all the participants. The second, as Inan said, I also learned a lot because this is a two-way process. We are trying to share our experience and also we are trying to understand the others' experiences and views, and that enriches our knowledge level and information about this governance issue. And as a personal experience, all around the world, even in developed countries, developing countries, and less developed countries, governance is a big problem all around the world, even in the EU. Because I had a private sector experience of 23 years, and during that time, I was part of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development for some period. And I also had a chance to work with the European Commission, EU and European Environmental Agency. What I see is that even in that level, where the actually EU promotes the good governance practices, it's very difficult to reach a consensus. And OECD, for instance, mostly focus on the whole of government issue, which is very critical in the public governance, but it's very difficult to reach an effective solution on this. So I'm really thankful, and I'm happy to communicate with the participants so that I also would like to learn from them, because they have a lot of experience and it's very difficult to cover by ourselves.
All right, thank you so much. There's some really, really great one-word takeaways. I'll just mention a couple: data-driven, relevant, inspiring, thought-provoking, informative, positive, reaffirmation, and participative. So thank you both so much. And as we wrap up, I wanted to add that everyone who registered for the event will receive an email soon with a recording and all of the resources from today's conversation. If you enjoyed this experience today, I just wanted to remind you all that there are many different opportunities that you have to learn with Apolitical. You can either attend an upcoming event, and we have one on May 19th on how to engage the public around climate change, and another on May the 27th on how to be an adaptive leader in the public service. You can also create your own workshop with us. You can contribute your own expertise and experiences by writing for us using the link we posted earlier in the chat, or you can take our premium learning courses with A+ and gain certification and topics chosen in collaboration with government. All right, thank you so much, and especially to our speakers. I'll give a round of applause without necessarily turning off or encouraging everyone to turn themselves back on. But thank you so much. This was really, really, really informative. Thank you.
Thanks, Ula, and thank
Thanks
you
a
for
lot.
all the participants for spending their time.